Streaming from outside the mainstream, Beyond a Pale, the podcast, hosted by Paleface.
I am thankful for my next guest. She is an outspoken nurse and author helping future nurses get ahead of the game. Today, we will discuss, among other things, her book, Autopsy of the NP, Dissecting the Nursing Profession Piece by Piece. Nancy Congleton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's so great to have you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you from myself and my audience for all the hard work and sacrifice of yourself and all healthcare workers out there putting their own health at risk on a daily basis to serve the rest of us right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And I also would like to say, as a brother myself to 4 precious sisters, 3 who are nurses, I have a deep respect for the vocation, and having you here today, it just means a lot to me. So I want you to know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, Nancy, can you please share with my audience your backstory and how you came to write Autopsy of an NP?
Yes. So I had, graduated nursing school, jumped into the profession, started working, and it didn't take long for me to realize that I wasn't prepared for it. Nursing program did a great job at covering drugs, disease, death, what I refer to as kind of the guts of the profession, what you have to pass your test. But as far as really preparing us to be a nurse and transition from nursing student to a practicing nurse with all of the other cultural aspects and relationships aspects and legal issues, I just wasn't prepared. And after a while, that just kept eating at me and eating at me and eating at me until I finally wrote a book that would help others.
That's excellent. I was excited to read it. I was just curious. So I know that anyone who's actually looking into nursing is really going to want to read this book. So in your book, you talk about career options for nurses. How did you decide on your path for nursing or in nursing?
And here's the thing about that. There are all of these options out there. There's all of these different specialties, but there are also kind of different requirements. So meaning not every place, but a lot of places won't let you into an ER unless you've had prior experience, or they won't let you go out and be a home health nurse by yourself unless you've clocked 2 to 3 years as a bedside nurse.
Gotcha.
So on one hand, there's all these options out there, but at the same time, as a new nurse, you have to look at, okay, what jobs are available to me as a brand new nurse? Who's willing to let me in? And so there are plenty of jobs out there, but my point is you may not get the exact area you want fresh out of the gate. You might have to work for it.
But you might just find out that you like it anyway.
Exactly.
I mentor young men and women, and I always tell them that to never try to have such a straight path, that it's going to zigzag. And
and you learn stuff by maybe stepping into some of those departments that you wouldn't have first picked that will carry you to those other areas that you want.
Exactly. So can you tell me a little about your NICU experience that you had?
Yeah. So NICU was interesting. I mean, it was night shift, which was kind of different for me, working overnights. And it was hard. I was in a hospital where we had a lot of mothers and babies that didn't have a lot of prenatal care. So we never knew what to expect. We had a lot of high-risk deliveries. We had a lot of babies on ventilators. So it was rough, and it was a trying time to, just see infants that didn't have the care that they needed, and then the repercussions of that.
So what did you do for yourself for self-care to make sure that you were mentally up to that, or that you were able to give your best to take care of those newborns?
Well, it's a process that I think all nurses have to go through, and that is learning on your days off to take your mind off of it, to not let yourself just constantly be mentally in that space. When you're there, you're physically there, you're mentally there, and it's hard to walk away, especially if you've lost a patient or had, something critical happen or almost lost a patient. It's hard to take yourself away from that mentally, but just learning, this is my day, and I'm going to get a pedicure, or I'm going to read a book. I'm going to sit on the porch and have a glass of tea. I'm going to have this time for me and give myself permission to not constantly think about it.
Right. I think that's very good advice for everyone. So one of the things that you talk about in your book is that there's the 9-to-5ers and people could do that, but you yourself don't think that you could do anything straight for 5 days, and
No.
that you like the longer days if that's what it takes to be able to mix it up and not have to do it, the 9-to-5. So why do you think that is? What is it about you? Do you think that makes that the thing?
Okay, this might sound crazy or weird or whatever, but I just don't want to be a robot. I just felt like the 9-to-5, Monday through Friday, same place, same people, same building, same traffic to and from. I just felt like I was a robot, and I don't want to just be doing the same thing in a row 5 days a week. I would rather work really, really hard 2 to 3 days and then be able to take a breath and mix it up.
I would think you would need that too in that profession. I know that my sisters, it's taxing. I don't think people realize the mental taxing and the physical taxing piece of nursing and how just applauded you are all to be. So I think that's great that you've come to that. So what are some things that you think that family members can do, of people that nurses are helping their family members? What do you think that there are things that family members can do to help medical professionals give their family better care?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is one of the concerns, issues, frustrations that I've came across many times in my practice. And it's that, we'll have a patient that we're taking care of, and the family will be in the room, and they'll say, hey, in addition to what they've got going on, we're really concerned that she's going to need a knee surgery, or grandma needs an MRI. She's been confused lately, and while she's here for pneumonia, we would really like to get this checked out. Those are very difficult situations, and here's why. Back 40, 50 years ago, if you were in the hospital, it was like almost a one-stop shop. Any concern you had, you could get it all looked at. Right. And the insurance would cover it. It was no problem. But now, with the regulations we have for not only Medicare, Medicaid, but also commercial insurance, they won't allow us to just run any test, do any diagnostic while you're in the hospital. It has to all be tied to, connected to what the patient was admitted for. And if it falls outside that, then they're looking at insurance fraud, negligence, trumping up a bill with extra tests. But it's hard because we understand that the families want their loved one to be totally taken care of, but we have to be very in line with those Medicare and insurance guidelines. And that's something I've found a lot of families have a hard time with.
Yeah, I can think that's true. And I know in your book, you also talk about the legal aspects of it and how you actually can stay on top of that and protect yourself as a nurse. So what do you have? What kind of advice do you have for doing that to other nurses?
Well, there's quite a few different pathways as far as legal issues, legal pitfalls. One of the ones that I will say right now is a hot one is don't violate HIPAA. Don't be talking about your patient's information.
Don't post it on Facebook.
Don't post it on Facebook. Don't mention something in an elevator. And not only that, and I give some examples in my book because, like my grandma, bless her heart, she likes to ask me the question, well, have you taken care of anybody that I know recently? I'm like, Grandma, I can't confirm or deny that I have or have not taken care of anybody that you have or have not known. I can't do that. But people, that's still something that the public is coming around to. And it's also with our culture, we're such a social culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to just let something slip off your tongue, even if it's not really juicy, but yet it's still violating HIPAA. So learning to keep a lid on it and to protect yourself, that would probably be, with our time that we're in, that's one of the most important ones.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So one thing I also want to know, Nancy, is what can the public do to support healthcare workers at this time, especially our nation's nurses?
Okay. One of the things that the public can do is to be patient with our nursing staff.
Mm,
And what I mean is this: we're short staffed. Most places around the United States are short staffed with nurses. So I know that it always breaks my heart when I go into a room and there's a patient or their loved ones that really want to talk to me. There's a strong connection with a lot of patients and family members and nurses. And it's almost like the nurse is in the room. I want to talk to her. I want to get to know her. You know, most of the public really likes nurses from what I have discovered over 17 years. But one of the greatest things that the public can do is understand when we have to walk away, because
right.
they're not the only patient we have. We also have all of these other patients, and we have tasks that have to be completed and things that we have to check up on them. And it's hard enough as it is for us to walk away, but when patients and family members are trying to keep us in the room to tell us one more thing, or talk to us about, you know, one more granddaughter or nephew that's going into the nursing profession, it makes it really hard for us to be able to take care of everyone.
Right. So with that, do you think that this shortage or the short staffing, do you think that is a cost savings thing, or is that really just because there is a shortage of nurses in the profession?
I think it's actually a shortage of nurses in the profession. If you look, I mean, even with just my area, and 25, 30 miles out, I live in kind of a small town, but 25, 30 miles out, there's 3 big hospitals. And I mean, some of them have hundreds of nursing positions that are open.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yes, you know, that range from everything from OR to ICU to med surg. So I definitely don't think it's hospitals cracking down and saying we're not going to fill these positions. I feel like that there's not enough trained nurses out there and nurses who want to do it that are just available to fill those spots.
So what do you think can be done to encourage more people to go into nursing?
Well, one of the things is I feel like that we're not adequately preparing them. And that kind of goes back to my book.
Mm-hmm.
There are nurses that I graduated with that are not even practicing. So I feel like that we need to have honest conversations with people who are interested in the nursing profession. I've always been of the mindset that if people know what they're going into, if they know what it's really like, that they'll be able to stick it out and push through and get to that point where they are established, grounded nurses. But I think we have a lot of culture shock. I think the public hears job security, flexible hours, multiple areas to choose from. They hear all the great things about the nursing profession, but then after they graduate and get out in the workforce, then they're hit with all the other things that make the job difficult. And then we have nurses that are dropping out within 2 to 3 years of practice.
Well, that's unfortunate. I think in the book you actually equate it to buying a car from like a
Yes.
swarmy salesman, as I
Yes.
recall.
Yes. It's like,
I
okay,
thought that
here's
was
this
cute.
awesome car. Yeah. You're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, I just got bait and switched here. So I guess there needs to be some innovation, I guess, within the way that nurses are prepared, but also maybe something that can be done in our health sector to make sure that some of these things are relieved so that nurses have a better time. Don't you think?
um, I kind of feel like that the nursing profession, it's a very rewarding profession,
Mhm.
but it's very challenging.
Right.
And just with the nature of it, I don't think that some of those challenges that we can change them. The legal issues that nurses face, that we have to be prepared for and constantly aware of, I don't think those are going to go away. If anything, they might even increase.
Right.
The difficult relationship dynamics that are within the profession, I don't think those are going to go away. So I really think that it's going to be about having honest conversations with future nurses so that when they hit the ground with this new job, they're like, hey, I was told about that. I was warned about that. I know that this is going to happen. And if we know about it, it's just not such a shock to our system.
I think that's great advice. Hopefully there's mentors out there, and hopefully there's folks out there that will read your book, because I think if they read your book, it's going to go a long way to help them understand that. So Nancy, is there anything else that you would like to share before we close out the show for today?
Definitely if somebody is interested in the profession, do two things. One, if you have any family members, cousins, friends, acquaintances, invite them for a cup of coffee, pull up a chair with them, talk to them, have them share any frustrating experiences that they have had with you so that you hear it from somebody you know. And also, if you're interested in being a nurse, and let's say you're interested in being a hospital nurse, contact that hospital, contact HR, say, I'm interested in becoming a nurse, but I would love to see if I can shadow somebody and just come in for a couple of hours, follow a nurse around, and just see it for myself and get a feel for it. And some, not all, but some of the HRs and some of the hospitals are really great at working with future nurses and saying, yes, let us introduce you to kind of how things go so that you have a better idea of what you want to do and if this is something you want to do.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that there are some that will do that. So I urge anyone in my audience who is interested or knows someone who is interested in choosing nursing as a profession, or if you're just curious like I was, to read her book, Autopsy of the NP, Dissecting the Nursing Profession Piece by Piece. I bought my copy at Amazon, so I know it's there. So Nancy Congleton, this has been an honor. Thank you so much for being on the front line and for being on the podcast. Godspeed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Beyond the Pale, the podcast.